You're listening to a podcast of spurious morality.
Hello and welcome to a podcast of spurious morality. I'm Johnstone, and with me this week I have Connor.
Hello.
And I have Mansoor.
Hello.
And we're kind of crossing off some unfinished business here. We've got a series of Ninth Doctor adventures to talk about, and that is what we're going to do. Since we last did a Ninth Doctor Adventures podcast, we've had new Ninth Doctor adventures, and we will doubtless talk about those at some point in the future. At the time of recording, we have had Snare and we have had The Last Days of the Powell Estate, and I've enjoyed them immensely. I hope you two have as well.
I think it's just the shot in the arm that the Ninth Doctor Adventures needed. It feels so 2005. It feels fresh at the same time because, like, the second one goes into a lot of urban exploration stuff on social media that, you know, it feels like a modern day story, but it also feels like it's perfectly at home in that 2005 series. Eccleston and Piper are incredible.
It's just hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. Very happy with it, but like I say, we'll do that in the future because we've got a third series to talk about. So we've picked our highlights. We've decided that we're going to go with The Green Gift, The Beautiful Game, Run, The Running Men, Ancient History, and all of Starcrossed, because Ninth Doctor and River Song is just a match made in heaven, as was proven by that set. So we'll dive straight in and we'll go for The Green Gift, which I think you wanted to talk about most of all, Connor. So do you want to kind of kick off with that?
So I would be the first to complain about Big Finish doing like big nostalgia stories, and making that the basis for a story. This one appeals very specifically to me because Christopher Eccleston was my first Doctor, and The Green Death was the first classic series story I saw, or one of them, very early days. So getting a Ninth Doctor sequel to The Green Death fills my heart with such joy because it's my first Doctor and my first classic story meeting, and they're both very special to me. So that is the main crux on which I enjoy it. It follows up on the end of Series 2 of the Ninth Doctor Adventures as well, because he still has his two companions with him. And they get left here. So there's been there's obviously been a wee series of adventures, not too many, I think, between Red Darkness and The Green Gift for the Doctor, Callum and Doyle. But they do feel like a reasonably settled little TARDIS crew. The Doctor, well, I say settled, Callum and Doyle feel as if they're settled. The Doctor is very clearly not settled with them, and that's a big point of this story. And I like how it ends that they sort of make their decision to stay at the same time the Doctor has decided they'll stay. But I like that even just for that little short time, there was a proper companion for the Ninth Doctor, and there is a little bit of an arc between Series 2 and 3 with that. It's a very short arc, but it's there. So I think that works well. Louise Jameson's also in it, and she's smashing. She's really, really good in anything. She plays this version of Boss, and that's pretty cool. So yeah, I'd put my hand on my heart and say this appeals to me for very specific reasons, but it made me really happy that there was a Ninth Doctor Green Death story, because it was a huge part of me getting into Doctor Who back in 2005, getting to see the Green Death.
I think it works quite nicely. Like, we all rolled our eyes. Oh, here we go, maggots from the Green Death, blah blah blah. But it works. It's a story that has kind of, I guess, the core values, I guess, of the Green Death. But it's a very different story that does its own thing, and I kind of like that sequels with well-known monsters that do something different. And we had to have Boss as well. It couldn't just be the Green Gift. We had the Green Death, the maggots. We had to have Boss too. Mansoor, anything you want to add about this one?
Um, I the main thoughts I had about this was the off-screen adventures that you've mentioned. I think you might have said this on the previous Ninth Doctor episode, but it feels a bit odd to me to just like I feel like we should have had at least one interim adventure, or like a box set where you've got that arc of um, them traveling, and then this is the last story in the set. It feels like just a bit of a wasted opportunity to not just have that play out and just do it all off, quote marks off screen. So yeah, I was a bit. I wish there was a bit more of that we had heard. Um, and the story itself, it's solid. I wasn't like blown away by it. That one of the issues I had is that it's one of those stories, and this is like this happened on TV as well. One of those stories where which monster is going to be in it, but then there's supposedly a lot of tension in the sort of reveal of who it is. I mean, like there's a lot of classic stories that have like Dalek in the title, and yet like the big cliffhanger of episode one is that it's a Dalek. So yeah, it's not without precedent, but I thought there was a little bit of time wasted with some of the reveal and build up, and we could have just gotten to that a bit sooner. But other than that, as I say, uh, yeah, pretty solid. Not And Louise Jameson was really good as always, and it is nice to kind of go back to those early days of Big Finish where, because there wasn't a regular Doctor Who range, you had these quite big, well-known companion actors playing brand new roles. So it's nice to have that happen again now and then.
And indeed, it's the second time it's happened in this range because we had Maureen O'Brien last season, who was also great in that. There's
Yes.
definitely something to be said for it. Yeah, I'm with you on the Conan Doyle thing. Like, I think they should have got a set. I think a set would have been enough, but I think they should have got a set. Maybe we could have had a story where the Doctor sort of tried to abandon them or leave them behind somewhere, and it was the wrong place. And then there'd have been a little bit more that could have been done with this one about making this the right place to drop them off. I don't know, something like that. But it kind of feels like we had a set's worth of stories, a storyline, mini storyline, or whatever taken away from us. However, it does resolve the unfinished business, and it does kind of hammer home the Ninth Doctor's not ready for a companion yet, and bigs up the whole isn't Rose important thing. But I think it proves, if nothing else, that the Ninth Doctor does need a companion. Ideally, that companion would be Rose, which is exactly what we've got now, but that's not something that could happen while this was recorded, obviously. So yeah, we've done that. We've at least played in the companion toy box with the Ninth Doctor a little bit more than we had. Should we have a look at our next episode then? So the next episode we've chosen to take a look at is The Beautiful Game. I'm a big fan of this one. It's it's got sort of quite a few really good moments and ideas behind it, and obviously, sort of Doctor Who and football aren't necessarily the obvious pairing. There's plenty of jokes about Doctor Who fans not being football fans and all that kind of thing. I think it's a load of nonsense, but this is good, and it kind of brings in sort of that other element as well. We've got the character of Daphne, who's kind of a woman that's interested in football. God forbid, and it kind of runs with that. It has some pretty cool aliens who basically just want to collect everything, which is a pretty neat idea. I'm a big fan of this one. I think it just sort of it's not your normal Doctor Who story. I think it works very well with Eccleston. I think it's got that sort of 2005 riff, and football was better back then because that's when United were winning everything, obviously. So yeah, I am a fan of the beautiful game, and indeed the episode that's named after it. Terrible joke. Connor, do you want to talk to us about this one?
So I am one of those Doctor Who fans that despises football in all its forms. But I think this is a cracking episode. Um, it's really informative. I feel like I came away having learned a lot about the origins of, the beautiful game. Um, it's pardon me, sorry. It's very fictionalized, obviously, because there's an alien running about in it all. But it feels as well like it's appealing to Christopher Eccleston's interests. And there's a bit towards the start where the Doctor gets to be a footballer and he's playing. Is it Manchester Intergalactic? Is the name of the team? I'm pretty sure it is. That the Doctor's getting to play for. I'd love to know what color the shirt is. But it sort of comes all the way back then to the start. Again, there's a bit of a personal reason. My dad is a huge Manchester City fan, but whenever they don't do well and they sort of piss him off by playing badly, he goes and takes a wee break and he goes and supports Preston North End instead. And the guy in this is, one of the side characters is the manager of Preston North End. So it's like, okay, that's pretty cool. So it's a really decent wee story. I enjoy it a lot. It's again, it's how informative it feels, and I do feel, as I said, I come away feeling like I've learned a lot about the history of football from this, because the Doctor's basically giving us a history lesson on football throughout. Um, but it has some of the best characters. Some of the best guest characters in the Ninth Doctor Adventures range. It's just a really fun listen, and it's again one of my go tos. If I have a spare hour that I need to fill, it's generally one of the highest accolades I can give Big Finish is like, right, what episode can I listen to here? I'm going to put the beautiful game on. So it's a nice go to whenever I just want a fun Doctor Who story.
I have to admit, this was because listening in preparation for this podcast was the second time that I've heard this series, and this was one that I was really looking forward to. There's a couple of others which obviously we're going to get to, but this is one that I was like, yeah, I really want to hear that episode again. I really enjoyed it on release, and I enjoyed it just as much the second time round. Anything you want to add, Mansoor?
I I was a bit mixed on this one. I liked it. I think the reason I wasn't completely sold on it was that it was like a solid story like The Green Gift, but that it was gesturing towards some deeper, darker stuff, but then not really exploring it. So well, there's the whole thing about women and in football and feminism, but then also I think there were moments where it was like alluding to like the dark side of football and football violence, and it really isn't fair to like judge a story on what it's not. But that made me think about what a story about football in Doctor Who would be like if it was the Seventh Doctor and Ace's background with coming up against racism in the 80s. Like, how interesting would that be to have, or maybe do a sequel to The Fearmonger, but it's to do with football violence. Um, and again, really unfair to think about like a completely different story and judge this one on that basis. But I would like a Doctor Who story that was like kind of more new adventures inflected, and that like delved into that darker side of things a lot more wholeheartedly. Um, but yeah, judging it on its own terms, this was like a really solid story. But it just made me think about other possibilities. And another possibility would have been making this a 13th Doctor story, because we have Jodie Whittaker back now. So that would be interesting to me as well. Like if you're doing a story about feminism and women in football, how about having it be the only full-time female Doctor who's in that story? But again, potentially a completely different story.
That's definitely a sequel I'd like to see happen. That's a great idea actually. It's an episode that's certainly left me wanting more. Anyway, I'd love to sort of revisit the world of this episode, as it were.
Yeah.
It's a great deal of fun. Shall we? Should we shift on to our next one? I should have said, shall we run onto our next one? Because it's run. Go on, admit it. We all rolled our eyes at the Ninth Doctor's going to meet Alpha Centauri. When that was announced, we all kind of went, this is just peak Big Finish. Thing A
We
meets
did.
Thing B.
We did have that reaction, and we were wrong because it's great.
It is great, yes. Oh no, that's where I was going with what I was saying there. Do not worry. Um, we rolled our eyes. We went, "Oh, Alpha Centauri meets the Ninth Doctor," because of course they bloody do. But no, it's actually a great, like, kind of really fun episode. It's funny actually. Mansoor mentioned the Fearmonger just before, and I re-listened to Fearmonger recently for the 275 series we're doing, and this is actually it definitely has vibes. It's not similar to the Fearmonger, but it definitely kind of lives in the same headspace, I guess. It's far more fun for a start. This isn't manipulative Seventh Doctor. This is the Ninth Doctor just having time of his life. But he does kind of turn up with a mission. He turns up to help Alpha Centauri in their early days in politics, and yeah, I kind of love it. It does revisit the sort of idea of Galactic Federation and all that kind of thing. So it's a Peladon sequel, which, I guess the presence of Alpha Centauri could kind of tell you that. I think it's well done. I think we've got a really good story here. I like good Ice Warriors. I think Ice Warriors are actually more interesting when they're goodies than when they're just marauding evil aliens. They're kind of unique in Doctor Who, really, is the only kind of monster that has been an outright villain and an outright ally
So the
at various
Draconians
points.
as well, if you count the Bernice range, like the Draconians sort of had that same back and forth.
Yes, they do. I mean, kind of in Frontier in Space, they were kind of in the middle, weren't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, I like a good Ice Warrior. That's my point. And it's I think they're used really effectively here. We've got a nasty villain who's exceptionally right wing and wants to cheat at politics, and the Doctor, Alpha Centauri, and some good Ice Warriors just kind of make sure it all goes okay. It's a little bit light-hearted, considering some of the subject matter, but you know what? I'm having fun with this one. Anything you want to add, Connor?
Yes, so I think Alpha Centauri. Yes, we all roll our eyes when Big Finish brings back X thing from the classic series for the millionth time, but Alpha Centauri actually has not been overused at Big Finish. I can think of 3 appearances over the course of, what is it now, 26 years of Doctor Who on audio. There may be some that I have forgotten, but I can think of 3 off the top of my head, which is that Fifth Doctor and RMM story, the Peladon box set, and this. If there's any others I've forgotten, I apologize, but I would argue that Alpha Centauri is not overused, and they are just such a joy of a character that I'm on board with the Doctor meeting them here. So it's a prequel to all of Alpha's other stories, and it sort of covers the very earliest days of their political career, and the Doctor sort of inspires them because Alpha Centauri is quite timid anyway, but I like that the Doctor takes on this sort of inspirational role for them. Um, it's a nice little political runaround. It does fall in. The villains feel a little bit cartoony at times. Like there's not too much in the way of subtlety. There's goodies, there's baddies, and it's black and white. Who's who? There's not too much in the way of moral grayness, which I think is sort of a requirement of a good political thriller. So this does play out perhaps not as effectively as it could have done, but I still enjoy it because the lead pairing of the Ninth Doctor and Alpha Centauri is pretty good. Um, there's a fun little Easter egg as well, which always comes to me when I think of this story. I've forgotten the name of the Ice Warrior, but he sort of appears as this shadowy figure to the Doctor and Alpha a couple of times throughout the story. There's one of them where he's talking to the Doctor in some alleyway or on a rooftop. He's in the shadows and he disappears, and the Doctor says, "Oh, get a load of you, Batman!" And it plays the Michael Keaton Batman theme in the background, which is a nice little musical reference. So that's quite cool. But yeah, it's just a fun story. I think that's what the Ninth Doctor Adventures or that original run boils down to in the end. Um, they are a run of really fun little standalone stories. I still think series one works the best as a series, and the others they're more like a nice collection of standalone stories that you can dip in and out of, and this is a nice one to dip in and out of again.
I'm going to be finicky and say I think Alpha Centauri pops up in a companion chronicle as well. The
That's
point
still
still
four
stands.
appearances. The point is, it's four. What's that? 4 appearances over 26 years. It's not a lot. So it's
It's
just
not, no,
I
no.
understand we talk about that eye roll reaction whenever X character meets Y character, and it's a bit action figure smashy smashy. Um, but I think it's warranted here. I think it's justified. I think it's cool to get Alpha Centauri in a new series episode.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
totally.
been,
And it works.
and like we said, there were two companions who are playing different roles in these box sets recently, so there is some restraint there because they could have had the Ninth Doctor meeting Leela um, and Vicky. So yeah, they didn't go in that direction. Um, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, one of the most memorable things about this for me was Jane Asher, like playing kind of space Trump, and that yeah, I think it was quite broad, but I thought it worked pretty well. Yeah, not much more to say. Beyond, there's a little note I've just seen on TARDIS Wiki. Apparently, the writer confirmed that the Doctor refers to Alpha Centauri as AC, and that's a reference to AOC. So, yeah, another little Easter egg. But yeah, a really fun story. I thought that, yeah, just doesn't outstay its welcome and is just pitched just right for me.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that, again, just as I was going through this series, I found I was looking forward to. Like, I really did want to hear this one again. It uses Alpha Centauri really well, and the prequel idea works quite nicely. So yeah, it's a good one. And another shout out for Jane Asher, because I find that anything Jane Asher does with Big Finish tends to be rather brilliant. She's excellent in Chase the Night, which is one of my favourite Fourth Doctor adventures. So one of those great little occasional guest actors they get in. Absolutely. Shall we move on to The Running Men then, which is the next story we've chosen to take a look at? I like this one. It's a northern setting. I'm a big fan of those, and it's basically Doctor Who teams up with a police officer to investigate weird alien goings on. It's nice to have a northern setting. It's nice to have a setting where people don't feel the need to comment on the Doctor's accent. So, Connor, do you want to talk to us about the Running Men?
Yeah, this one feels like it flies under the radar slightly because the Ninth Doctor adventure sort of fell into a little bit of a formula where every set there was a big returning element, and that's usually what we're focusing on. Like, it's hard to look at. I can't even remember what episode it is, but it's that box set that has the Ninth Doctor and uh, Liv and Tanya and the Sea Devils. I cannot for the life of me remember what the other episode in that set was because you've got these two big returning classic pillars on either side of it. But this one feels like it flies under the radar. I really enjoy it. It's it's a little story that acquits itself well. And doesn't go, does not need to rely on a returning element in the way that some of the other Ninth Doctor adventures do. Um, it's Sergeant Ambika Desai is the pseudo companion here. She's really memorable, and she feels almost like a like a Big Finish take on Yasmin Khan. I'm actually pretty sure that her photo on the cover is based on a picture of Yaz, with the actress's head photoshopped on instead. But I just like getting into it. It's sort of it feels slightly more grounded and realistic than some of the other stories. Um, I just like dipping in and out of it, and the guest characters are great. Again, the villains are pretty good, but the Doctor's two companions, they're just really easy to get into. And Baker's a great character. She's a really great foil for the Doctor in this. I love that he almost talks himself into being arrested for impersonating a police officer because the TARDIS is there as a police box, and it's the wee bit where they're going off in their. She's taking him back to the station in the car, and he's like, "Oh, come on, put the blue lights on. Come on, please." Yeah, as Mansoor said, it's a it's a good, solid, self-contained story. It acquits itself really well. Does not outstay its welcome. Very easily overshadowed by the Bernie Summerfield story, which is in the same set. But I actually think it's the highlight of that set. It's certainly the one that I feel myself gravitating towards the most out of the three that are in this set. I just really enjoy it.
I find it interesting, actually, how in the second series we did spend quite a lot of time talking about the stories that had some kind of returning element. I mean, we all love Flat Pat, didn't we? Liv and Helen and that kind of thing. We do seem to be picking out the ones from this third series that aren't the big, exciting returning element, main feature on the cover type thing. You're absolutely right. This is followed by the Ninth Doctor meets Bernice Summerfield. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But I think I'm with you. I think this is the highlight of the set. Another one that I really looked forward to revisiting. Anything you want to add, Mansoor?
No, nothing. Just yeah, I think this setting suits this Doctor as well. Not just the fact that it's set in the north, but I think something about the contemporary setting and the atmosphere. I think it just worked really well for this Doctor.
The Ninth Doctor does do
Modern
Earth
day,
21st century well. Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely sort of nicely suited.
yeah. Girl Interrupted
And
was like a. Was it Girl Interrupted? Was that the no?
girl something.
Disappeared something. That one, the start of the second box set.
Deconstructed.
Deconstructed, yeah.
Girl
That was
Deconstructed.
that was an amazing choice to like kick off the series because it was that I thought was just like a sort of just really solid setting, and I really like it when we revisit that sort of time and setting.
Yeah, absolutely. We like domestic 9, and hopefully we'll sort of see more of that in this new run. Like I'm looking forward to getting him out of the Powell estate. We've not quite managed that just yet, but we'll get there.
I think it's a fairly safe assumption with these new Ninth Doctor adventures that this was a box set that's been broken up into individual stories. This was a Pile Estate box set, I think, that's been broken up into individual releases. I'm pretty sure because the
I
third episode is
suspect
going to
you're
be set in
probably
Pile
right.
Estate as well.
I mean, to be fair, that's kind of how Series 1 went for a good chunk, so...
It is. I question though, because how often do they actually go back to the Pile Estate deliberately? Like the Ninth Doctor was pretty anti-domesticity.
Are these set later in series 1 though? Is that the reasoning of like it's at a point where he's gotten over that a little bit, the sort of I don't do domestic thing?
I don't think he does get over it though. I don't think he gets over it until he's David Tennant.
And even then...
um, and even then, he seems pretty grudging when he comes back in Doomsday. Now, I know he's doing it for Rose's benefit. You know, it's to give Rose a chance to relax and recover herself after Father's Day. It makes sense. It does make sense. But would the Ninth Doctor have actually put up with the Pile Estate for that long?
We'll never know.
I'm spoiling.
I mean, we do, because we've got 2 releases of it already. But shall we move on to ancient history then? Which I was very excited by this one, because I think that Bernice Summerfield is now a character who should just meet as many Doctors as possible. I think it's a shame that we've kind of got her capped at starting with 7. But we've had her with 7, we've had her with 8, we've had her with 9. Didn't she meet 12 in a book or something like that?
Yes, yes.
Yep. So I'm all for Benny just meeting Doctors left, right, and centre. She should. Same with Liv and Tanya, as you know they've done in this series as well.
Well, if River can meet all of them, then
Jodie Whittaker's story, I hope, with her.
Yes. They've got to do Benny and Jodie. They've got to.
I was just going to say they're not restricted by the chronology thing with River, so if there was the motivation for it, I'm sure they could find a way of having Bernice meet earlier Doctors as well.
I think 2 space-time archaeologists that have to wipe Doctors' memories every time they meet them might be a little bit too much.
They have been in the same story at least once, but I'm just surprised they haven't done more with that, of having River and Benny together. I think I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast or not, but I've definitely talked about it with others. But like a River Benny spin-off series on audio would be my
especially because they have a connection. Like they do establish that Benny was Rivers' professor at university.
Yeah, so they got.
Or sorry, the other way around. Benny was Rivers. Yes, Benny was Rivers' professor.
Yeah.
So, and they both know Professor Candy as well. I think that was established even further back. So, yeah.
I thought there was a bit of a missed opportunity because obviously through the sad loss of David Warner, the Benny range needed to be reformatted. And they were reformatting the River Song range at the same time. I genuinely wanted them to merge them for a while and have River and Benny co-headline a series together.
I'm fairly sure there's an 18-month-old Spodcast episode where we have this exact conversation, you know, which was around the time they were retooling the series.
Because it feels like the challenge with Benny, we're going on to a tangent about Bernice and Big Finish, but like it seems like part of the challenge with Bernice is they don't quite know what to do with her, and they've fallen back in recent years to like making her stories technically Doctor Who stories, and I guess in order to boost sales. But River seems to be hugely popular, so again, like commercially, would it not make sense to pair the two, like having a kind of really well-regarded character and then a well-regarded and more recent commercially successful character who actually have some in-universe connection and I think a bit of chemistry in that episode that they were in together.
They're really good together in that story. They're really
Yeah.
good together. And I think going from the back, going from the behind the scenes stuff, Alex Kingston and Lisa Barman seemed really pleased because they were aware of each other. Like Alex Kingston says, "Oh, I knew River was sort of based on Benny." The two of them seem really pleased to actually to have finally met and had their characters interact. Like there's genuine chemistry between the characters and between the actors. I would love that to be capitalized on more than it has been.
And then once we've got that, we can have Lady Christina and Iris Wildthyme team up as well.
The battle of the bosses.
But anyway, we should probably talk about the actual story in this box set.
Yes, we should. We should leave that conversation to be ancient history.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is it's a straightforward story. It does what I want it to do, which is has the Ninth Doctor kind of being a bit Time War moody, and this is Benny seeing, a different Doctor post Time War, and he doesn't even admit to her that he's the Doctor for a little while at the start, and all this kind of thing. But what kind of happens? It's nothing big or radical, or I'm fine with that. I just kind of it's more of a Beneath Summerfield story where the Doctor turns up, I think, and that's probably all things considered what I was after from this. Yeah, Connor, talk to us about it.
So I think there's a little bit of an undercurrent of sadness in this story, both in universe and in sort of the real world as well. Because I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure this was the first Benny Summerfield story to come out after David Warner passed away, or the first. It's the first Benny story without David Warner's Doctor for a long time. Um, and I certainly feel his loss very keenly in listening to this because there's a version of it. I know the Ninth Doctor and the Unbound Doctor did meet in Once and Future, but they didn't meet with Benny, and I do feel his loss here. Um, so I think that was, I think the well, that Once and Future story I don't think was announced until well after this came out. I might be wrong on that, but I think that was the case. Um, I'm still pretty sure that this was the first. Yeah, I think this came out beforehand. So we were obviously aware. We're going into this listening, and okay, this is the first time Benny's been back at Big Finish since David Warner passed away. Um, it's good. It's good. There's an undercurrent of sadness, I think, in it as well because Benny. It's set after the Time War. The Doctor's feeling the loss of the Time Lords in a way that I don't think he has when he's met some of the other companions, like the Brigadier and Liv. For some reason, it feels more personal here with Benny. Maybe that's because she was more intimately connected with the Time Lords than they were. But I do think that's there. Their investigating Time War fallout obviously plays a part as well. Um, but they're at odds for a good bit of the story as well, and it makes for some fantastic drama. And the Doctor and Benny almost end up slightly frosty with each other because he has lied to her and concealed his identity, and he hasn't let on that it's actually him. And she's very put out by that, rightly so. But I think that plays really well, and obviously Eggleston and Barman are fantastic performers and really sell it. The story feels a bit more backgrounded compared to the meaning of these two characters. Not necessarily a bad thing, but I think I could have done with more. I maybe would have liked Benny to have tagged along with the Ninth Doctor for a little while, um, rather than this just be a one-off. I think is my takeaway from it. It feels like the story they were trying to tell. between the Doctor and Benny was not, or it could have been fleshed out more over multiple episodes. I think that I just wish there had been slightly more of this new series Benny, and we get a bit more of an idea where she's at in this new post Unbound era.
It would also not be unreasonable for meeting Benny to be kind of the catalyst for him deciding that actually he does need a companion, and that's what encourages him to ask Rose to join him at the end of Rose. Like that would have been a nice little tie-in that wouldn't really have affected anything, I guess. Mansoor, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, I think that agree. The story itself is not anything hugely unusual. It is the interaction between the Doctor and Benny that I found most interesting, and like for the kind of the first half of the story, it was so coy about it. I was wondering, are they just going to like do a vague reference to that time war trauma and then just like not revisit it? They do go back to it a little bit towards the end, but yeah, I'd agree that a box set like we got with River would have been the way to go if you're having the Doctor meet someone like Bernice. I thought there were some nice little details, again, like tailoring things to this Doctor. So that Bernice has got a huge history with the Seventh Doctor, and particularly in the novels, he goes down that hugely manipulative avenue in terms of his character. So the Ninth Doctor is doing some deception and manipulation here with his false identity, but I thought it was kind of fitting that he talks about panicking when he's filling out a form and coming up with a ridiculous name. That felt very in keeping with this Doctor. But yeah, again, as you said, I would have just wanted a bit more to have gone a bit deeper into their relationship and what it's like now, like post Time War. And like we were saying before, just wish they could find a way to do something more consistent with Bernice, which they are doing now with the single disc releases. We've got a new ongoing series that she's leading. I haven't heard the Dalek ones, but I'm a bit cautious that again it seems like they've fallen back on the crutch of Daleks as a solution to Bernice not being as commercially successful as other ranges. But I've yet to hear it, so I don't want to prejudge it before listening to it.
One thing that Gareth and I were talking about when we were doing Shadow of the Scourge for 275 was there's very little Seventh Doctor and Benny, really. Like, Big Finish have been going for 26 years, and it's still a very, very small handful of releases that have featured both characters. So, you know, I'll take a set or two of that any day. Like, they're great characters together. They work together. They're great in novel adaptations. They're great in, you know, stuff like Shadow of the Scourge and whatever. So there's room for it. Maybe that's the place to take Benny, sort of back to the start. Have her spend a bit of time with McCoy.
Yeah. I wonder if
I'd be
some
all
people
over
are
that.
like, I would as well, but I wonder if some people are like actively put off by a novel character being in the audios, or like that. There is so much history with Bernice. Maybe people are like, oh, I have to listen to decades worth of stuff, which isn't the case if a story is written. Because there was that Chris and Roz box set as well with the Seventh Doctor, and we didn't get any more of that, even though they've had their introductory story done on audio, so you can listen to their introduction as you can with Bernice. But I feel like there's something about people seeing, oh, there's a novel character in this. I'm gonna be less likely to buy that. There seems to
At
be
the,
something of that going on.
at the risk of getting really truly sidetracked, I would argue that one of the best jumping on points for Big Finish, for anyone who's coming to Big Finish for the first time, it is the Benny Summerfield and the Unbound Doctor series, because it's a fresh start for that range, even among, I know it's a volume 3, but it sort of disregards volume 1 and 2 entirely. and just starts afresh for Benny. But I think it's the closest analog, or it felt whenever it was coming out like the closest analog to TV Doctor Who. It was a new Doctor to me and a new companion to me, going on new adventures. With, it has its own version of the theme tune. It's its own continuity. I think it is the closest analog Big Finish. It's the closest Big Finish have ever come to actually recreating Doctor Who on TV, because it's its own thing completely, and it's not recreating an area. It is truly forging its own way. And it
I'd
requires
agree with
no
that. Yeah,
background. It is no background listening to it. Like, sure, you can go and listen to Benny's Adventures. You can go and listen to um, Sympathy for the Devil. But to get the first story with that Doctor and that Master, but they're not necessary. I didn't hear Sympathy for the Devil until well after I'd heard, the Unbound Universe box set. So that by the time I'd heard Sympathy for the Devil, I already knew that Doctor and I already knew that Master. So I think it's possibly the best, or certainly it's up there. It's one of the best jumping on points for a new listener. Big Finish.
And if you do hear the original David Warner stories first, there's only a couple of them, so
Yeah, there's only a handful.
it's funny that you should use the phrase jumping on point, because I was about to joke that all they need to do is label the Seventh Doctor and Benny set that I proposed as a great jumping on point. But yeah, there you go. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this one. I'm glad it exists, and I'm open to more. I agree this should have been a set. Thinking about it, this entire series of Ninth Doctor adventures could have been companions stick around for a set, and it wouldn't have offended me. Like, we could have had the characters from Green Gift kind of carry on. Callan and Doyle, they could have done a whole set. We could have had Alpha Centauri in a whole set.
I would just like to say before
yeah.
we move on to the next set, because there's obviously a connection between Benny and River, or a similarity between them. Whenever this was announced, the headline come through as the Doctor meets an archaeologist or something like that, and obviously you think from that headline, they're finally doing the Doctor and River song. I have never known such joy as opening up the news article and seeing Lisa Barman's face, and like, oh, that makes so much sense. Like, that's incredible. The headline has teed me up to expect River song, and it has given me Benny Summerfield instead. I'm not mad about this at all. That was a really great way of revealing that.
I will be never unhappy at a Benny announcement, ever.
And then the story ends with a line that really should have told us all what was coming next, because I think the Doctor says, nah, I'm going to steer clear of time-travelling archaeologists for a while. And yet they still managed to announce Star-Crossed with River. And we were all really surprised. I don't think anybody, certainly not that I saw, nobody guessed. And that line's such a tease. That's exactly why that line is there, because Big Finish obviously knew River Song's coming next. Nobody guessed. We all hoped. We all obviously wanted the Ninth Doctor and River Song to meet and get him ticked off our list. But I didn't think it was actually going to happen. I didn't think we were going to get a full set either.
I think we all knew the Ninth Doctor and River Song was only a matter of time. I have to admit, I expected it to happen in a River set as opposed to a Ninth Doctor set. But then again, we got a 10th Doctor and River Song set, so a 9th Doctor and River Song set isn't the most far-fetched idea ever. And thankfully, Big Finish agreed with that, because we did get Star-Crossed, which came with 3 great stories: Swipe Right, Face of the Apocalypse, and Archipelago. And I'm a big fan of all 3. I'm assuming you're both big fans of all 3, because we've agreed that we're going to talk about all 3 of them. So we'll kick off with Swipe Right. Swipe Right it's very Dawny. It's definitely a Dawny story. It's one of those Dawny stories that incorporates kind of the relationship of the main characters and something that is pertinent in modern society. In this case, it's dating apps, but this is dating apps taken to an extreme to the point where they kind of rule the planet. Cool concept. It's the sort of thing Doctor Who has done really, really well, near enough since day one. Take something and put an alien spin on it, and there we go. We've got a story. We've got a society built around it. Yeah, it's an awful lot of fun. This one, there's a good bit of comedy. It really does sort of play up on that. But there is that dark side as well. If you don't agree with the dating app, if you don't find your perfect match, you're gonna get murdered. Which is obviously the big Doctor Who twist. Gives us an opportunity to explore the Doctor and Riversong's relationship as well. It's very different this time round. Every other Doctor has kind of just decided to swoon around her in some way, shape, or form, whereas the Ninth Doctor just turns up and just goes, nope, in the same way he did to Jackie Tyler, really. And he's kind of brutal about it. Like he doesn't accept for a minute that he could ever possibly fall in love with this person in any regeneration. He's so against the idea. And that's kind of where your main bit of drama comes from for the episode. And yeah, works a treat. It's nice to see that kind of relationship. And Riversong's reaction is very genuine and very vulnerable. And she's not a character that does appear very vulnerable an awful lot, particularly at Big Finish. So I'm kind of really glad we got that moment, and it does change as the set goes on. But for this, it's very much that nope that the Ninth Doctor gave Jackie Tyler in Rose. So talk to us about this one, Connor.
So not the strongest in the set, not the weakest in the set. It's a great start. The Doctor and Rivers, the Doctor's antagonism, because I think it is antagonism towards River Song. I think that outshines the story at play in the background. So Eccleston, it goes without saying, Eccleston and Kingston are phenomenal together. And as you said before, it was only a matter of time before we were going to get the Ninth Doctor and River Song. I'm delighted we got it in this form as a full set with a proper arc. Like it is a proper little mini series. There is a link between each story. It certainly lives up to my expectation of the momentum of the meeting. I love how it goes to really extreme pains to show how different the Ninth Doctor is from the others, as you say. I think that is born out of how different Christopher Eccleston is from the other actors who have played the Doctor, and the way he approaches the character, I think, is different to any other actor who has played the Doctor. And that is the driving force behind the story here. Because it takes River a lot longer to chip away at this Doctor's hard exterior compared to some of the other incarnations that she has met. He is categorically entirely opposed to having any sort of relationship with her, in a way that like it subverts what you expect from a new series Doctor, because they are all completely head over heels in love with her. I would like to counterpoint this as well, and just to get in now, if they don't do a Jodie Whittaker story with River Song, they're cards and should be ashamed of themselves. That needs to happen. But like it's exactly the opposite of what you expect from a new series Doctor, because they are so completely in love with her. In the same way that the fourth Doctor turning up and being so head over heels in love with her is the exact opposite of what you'd expect from a classic Doctor. That's what happens when he meets her in her series. So I like that they keep subverting those expectations towards River. The story's great. There's a fantastic joke towards the end where it's the husband and wife who sort of squabble and snipe at each other the whole way through, and you think they're only together because the app paired them, and they've settled for one another. The Doctor, I think it's River Song, comes back towards the end and says, "Oh, you're free. You don't have to stay together anymore. You can go and be with who you really love." And then it turns out they actually do really love each other, and they just argue because that's the way they get on. I thought that was really funny. Um, so that plays out. I think that's a really cracking joke. Um, yeah, it's a great start to the set. I think it's more significant for setting up the storyline behind Star-Crossed than it is being a story in its own right. But that's not a bad thing. It's a decent story. It's a John Dorney story through and through. And I think the story across Star-Crossed between the Doctor and River is fantastic. Is really superb. Um, and I almost take this not as three individual stories, but the box set has to be looked at as a whole. I think so. It's difficult. I find it difficult to talk about the individual stories, but it's a good one, and it's, as I said, it sets up this incredible box set.
It definitely, from a perspective, is part one of three. Yeah, this set can be looked at as a sort of three-parter, with the main plot obviously being the Ninth Doctor and River's relationship. But it's each standalone story is pretty good as well. I kind of like it works as both. Mansoor, do you want to talk to us about Swipe Right?
The dynamic between the two of them works really well. There is a reset at the end of the box set, but it's not laboured at this point. It's they just jump in and they just go with the fact that these two are getting to know each other at these points in their lives. The Doctor's reaction to River, I think, is really interesting and works in the context of this story. If you think about it too hard, I wonder how well it fits with the original intent of what was going on screen with Series 1 in 2005, because it's not explicit, but it seems pretty heavily hinted that he's got romantic feelings for Rose, and there's also potentially a bit of a love triangle between Captain Jack, Rose, the Doctor. And then in this story, I think it's pretty explicit about the Doctor saying that he's aromantic and contrasting that with a asexual character. So yeah, that I don't know how that quite fits with what was going on in Series 1. But then actually jumping ahead, if you see where River and the Doctor get to by the end of the third story, it maybe casts doubt on that self-characterization of being aromantic, because we'll get onto it when we talk about episode 3. So potentially a bit of a mismatch, but potentially not as well. And the main thing is, I think it just works in the context of this story and the dynamic between these characters.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the main point of this one is it's story number one of three, and it is setting up the Doctor and River Song thing. I like the story in the background, though. I am a big fan of what else is going on, and yeah, sort of the whole parody of the toxic dating scene. Number two then is Face of the Apocalypse, which is, for me, it's the weaker story in the set. I don't dislike it. I don't dislike anything in this set, but I think this one kind of, I don't think it quite builds on the momentum set up in the first one. I think that's made up in the third episode, but I think in this one we don't quite get that sort of natural follow on that perhaps we're completely after. I don't know. Um, it sort of, it feels a bit jarring. It kind of feels like it takes a few very sort of severe and sudden switches in tone. It's a bank heist thriller until it's not, and it's a time travel caper, and it just sort of moves in different directions very, very quickly, and I think it's easy to lose your way along it. We do still have some stuff, Ninth Doctor and River and their relationship. It is explored, but it's the one of the three that kind of explores it the least. It's almost like it's the difficult second album. So do you want to talk to us about it, Connor?
Yeah, I think I agree with what you say. It is the weakest episode of the set by some distance, because it is, as you say, so unfocused. It's the bank heist until it's not, and then it's something else until it's not, and it's a little bit too scattershot and unfocused for me, such that I struggle to recall the details of it. What I do remember is this feels like the Doctor starting to tolerate River more than he does in set, or in the in Swipe Right, even more than he does. So I think in Archipelago, um, but there's obviously a resonance between the story that's being told and the Doctor and River's relationship, which is good, that they are having to get these lovers back together and repair their relationship. While from River's point of view, her own relationship with this Doctor is in absolute tatters. Like, she doesn't expect him to be as resistant as he is to her, and it obviously hurts her um, quite deeply. But they're having to work on a similar problem with other people, and that it works quite nice thematically. Um, but I don't think there's a huge amount going for the episode itself, unfortunately.
What about you, Mansoor?
Yeah, I don't have loads to say about this one. There was nothing like objectionable that I remember, but same. This is one that I've got least to say about. So yeah, other than the concept of River's face showing up in history, that felt very new series. You could see that fitting into like the Matt Smith era very easily. Uh, but beyond that, yeah, I don't think I've got much more to say about this one.
I think that's an interesting point. I can genuinely see this working quite well as an 11th Doctor story. It does have that sort of Moffat-y feel to it. And I think it's kind of weird to have the Ninth Doctor in this kind of situation. Like, a lot of what we've listened to, a lot of what we've discussed, I think it's only going to work with the Ninth Doctor. He's a very unique Doctor, as we've said. Like, Christopher Eccleston is very different to any other actor. I think he was a wonderful bit of casting because it was sort of casting against type. And then after one series, we get David Tennant, who is very doctory. But yeah, I think this series does quite a good job of building on that, building on the fact that Eccleston's very undoctory. But yeah, like I say, this one, this is a Moffat era story. Like, I can see this actually working better with Smith or Capaldi than I can Eccleston, and it's one of the very, very few, possibly even the only story from these three series we've been talking about that maybe a different Doctor would fit in. I don't know. Let's move on to the finale then. And it's, I mean, for a while we thought it was the finale to the Ninth Doctor at Big Finish, and what a way to go out. It's Archipelago. It's Tim Foley. Therefore, it's just flipping excellent, isn't it? The man never has an off day. I like this one because it has sort of relationships as a key theme. So it really lets us explore the Ninth Doctor and River. It also gets rid of any other characters or the main supporting character fairly early on. And for large chunks, this is a two-hander between the Ninth Doctor and River. And they go through everything. They hate each other. They love each other. They sort of find the peace. They're presented with what appears to be a hopeless situation, and it's just like Big Finish character piece firing on all cylinders, written by one of the best names they've got to hand at the moment. I think it's absolutely cracking. I think it's exactly how I would want this set to end. And if this had have been the last Ninth Doctor adventure for a long time, as it was very heavily hinted to be. What a one to go out on. It's up there as a potential best individual Ninth Doctor Big Finish episode. I don't think I'd pick it as my favourite ever, but I think I'm able to sort of recognise that, yeah, this is damn good. This is one of the best they've done. So talk to us about it, Connor.
I'm definitely going to say maybe not the best in the range. Maybe not the. Actually, no, I'm going to say best in the range. Maybe not my favorite in the range, but I think it's the best piece of drama in the Ninth Doctor adventures. And that's entirely down to. Well, it's not entirely down. It's down to two things. It's down to Tim Foley's writing, which is stellar, and it's down to Christopher Eccleston and Alex Kingston's performances, which are double stellar. This is the jewel of this box set. It's the jewel right at the end of the third series. It puts the Doctor and River through the absolute ringer. They go through hell, basically, but they're going through it together, and they almost don't mind. It's like so. River finally manages to crack the Doctor's hard exterior, and she gets to the Doctor she knows and loves. After everything that he has put her through in the other stories. Well, no, that's not fair to say everything he's put her through. Everything that this relationship she has put her through with this Doctor, everything that the experience of that has put her through in the other stories comes to a head here, and finally she breaks through it, and she gets to her Doctor, the one she knows and loves, who's in all the Doctors. And it's like she's got through this incarnation to the core of him. The whole nautical thing, Tim Foley loves a nautical aesthetic, but that's great because so do I. That feels great that it's these two going on a voyage together, and they're both characters. The Doctor with his TARDIS, River with her vortex manipulator, they get to where they're going, and they quite often don't have the journey. This puts them through the journey, and that's where it shines. I just think it's a wonderful story. It's through and through a love story, and obviously you know it's going to be undone because the Doctor reads her diary. He knows about his future selves and their adventures with River Song. But he falls in love with her, I think. And does he fall in love with her, or does he realize that she loves him and he finally decides to respect that? I'm not sure. It could be both. It could be one or the other. Either is, I think, a beautiful story. The thought of this as the finale, I remember sitting because I always said if the Ninth Doctor, if Eccleston came back and did one box set as the character, that would have been enough for me. I'd have been happy to get him back for any amount. The fact we got 3 series and we thought at the time that this was going to be the finale, I remember sitting at the end listening to the last few minutes of the story, giving it my full attention because I knew I wanted to savor it. And it felt again like I was saying goodbye to him, and it did feel like enough. I was satisfied. I was like, I can cope with, I can go forward and be happy for what we got with Eccleston because we weren't guaranteed anything more. And maybe I wouldn't have had that with a lesser story, but this felt like such a worthy ending to our second time with the Ninth Doctor. Very pleased that it turned out not to be the ending for the Ninth Doctor or his second, that he has gone on and done more with Rose, and that has been wonderful. But I have a lot of respect for this story for making me feel satisfied. And I remember sitting at the end, listening to the last few minutes of the story, listening to the credits roll, and thinking, "Yeah, that was enough. I'm satisfied." So that's the greatest plaudit that I can give it. Was that it capped off the second Ninth Doctor era really, really well, and in such a way that I felt closure.
Yeah, I don't think there'll ever be enough Ninth Doctor. Like we never ever ever had enough on TV. We were robbed um, of the Ninth Doctor. I think that one series is just fantastic, and I love David Tennant. I love the 10th Doctor, but I would sacrifice series 2 as is tomorrow for another Eccleston series on screen. Obviously, not happened, never going to happen, never would have happened. But yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Which if this had been it, I'd have felt far better than before. We had 3 series on audio of Eccleston, and we've been able to pick apart each one of them, and we've picked out highlights. And there've been some episodes that we've missed that I genuinely love. Like, we've not talked about the Butler did it on this one. I think it's a great deal of fun. I love it. It's a great episode. But this would have been just such an excellent finale. I'm now hoping, after we've completely sung its praises unconditionally, that Mansoor is also a fan. He's not going to turn up and go, right, it's crap. Let's see.
Yeah, no, this was my favourite of the box set easily, and possibly of the series as well. Like, and like I said before, I think certainly like the first and the last episode um, were both some of my favourites, and all 3 work together as a 3-part linked series. That, like I was saying before, the stuff about the way the Ninth Doctor develops some sort of feelings for River, and I think it is ambiguous about what those are, and you could still go with what he says in that first episode about being aromantic and say it's like a different form of relationship. It's not a romantic relationship, but he has some genuine affection for her that develops over time. Or you could read it the other way, that he is actually developing romantic feelings for her. But yeah, either way, I think that ambiguity works really well. I think just we talked about the author and the writing, like the way that there's like scenes that become quite abstract, where you've got River's narration talking about um, all of this weird stuff that's going on around her and flashing back through her life. And I thought that was really, um, yeah, that was one of my favorite moments. It felt very like, I don't know, it made me think of something that's like breaking the sort of Big Finish mold of stories. Like, it felt different and fresh and interesting. Something that you might hear in uh, like a Radio 4 sci-fi play that's doing something a bit bizarre and interesting. Um, so yeah, I like, with so much output from Big Finish over the decades, it's refreshing to sometimes hear something that feels fresh and new and interesting. Um, and yeah, I agree. This is like a really nice end point to that first, what turns out to be that first run of Ninth Doctor audio stories. I would disagree slightly about trading season 2 though, because as much as it would have been great to have had more Eccleston on TV, it wasn't meant to be the case. But I think there's also something nice about having that really tight, like 1 year of storytelling, telling like his Doctor's era. Um, and again, not intended at all when they brought the show back, but that 13 episode series has a beginning, middle, and end, and tells a really coherent story about his character and what he's going through. Um, so I wouldn't want to lose that as well. And also, I think there is something about, less is more as well, of just having that one run and then walking away from it. And then we do get obviously loads more stories on audio to sort of fill out his history as well.
Yes.
But so yeah, it's not like we have to leave the character behind completely.
I think the biggest problem is with the Ninth Doctor having such a short run on screen, and it was a fairly tight knit storyline, and there are certain, I guess, points of no return in that series where you can't tell certain stories without certain characters being present and that kind of thing. It kind of feels the room we've got to place new stories within the Ninth Doctor era is very, very limited. And I think that is actually something that the 3 series we've discussed over these episodes kind of got affected by. Like, by default, there was no Rose, so it had to be pre-Rose. And it has been. And it's felt a little directionless as a result. Like, plenty's gone on. We've met the Brigadier, we've met Alpha Centauri, we've met Liv and Tanya, we've met Benny, we've met River. Loads and loads has happened. The Ninth Doctor's finally had a Cyberman story, 2 Cybermen stories, and they were both brilliant. But it never felt like it was going anywhere because this was before we ever met the Ninth Doctor on screen. All of it was. And it's kind of unfortunate that you've just got that kind of disconnect there. And it's the only sort of main flaw with this run. Like, there've been episodes that are better than others, that kind of thing, but point to a range where that's not the case. But I think, yeah, ultimately, like, I actually feel as though this range would have been better if there was more Ninth Doctor on screen, because there'd have been sort of more scope for where we could set stories and what we could do with them. So yeah, I guess it's kind of limited this series a bit, and I guess that now that we've got Rose in the Ninth Doctor Adventures as well, it has kind of blown things wide open to an extent of what we can do with these characters and where we can set stories. But ultimately, The Empty Child is still a cut-off point, because The Empty Child introduces an actor who I can pretty solidly guarantee is never going to turn up in this range. And the rest of the Ninth Doctor era kind of falls into that trap as well. So that's it. That's these 3 series done. Excellent story to end on. Just sort of, before we disappear off, any sort of closing thoughts? Do you want to pick a favourite series of the 3 or anything along those lines? Is it fair to say that this run has kind of run its course at this point? Like, did it need the shake-up? Did it need Rose to be reintroduced to Ninth Doctor stories? Go ahead, Connor.
Yes, I think it definitely. Yeah, I think it had run its course, because I feel so. First of all, I'll talk about the series. I think series 1 remains my favorite, and I think that's because you can feel an excitement in those stories that this is the first time they've got Christopher Eccleston playing the Doctor. It's a Rose prequel. And I think the overall quality of stories is highest in that first series. Like, I don't think they ever beat Respond to All Calls. I think it's the single best box set. Um, but I think Old Friends gives it a run for its money. I think it has the highest concentration of really high quality stories is there in series 1. But I think there's a feel to them as well, like this almost sort of febrile excitement that, oh my god, we've got Christopher Eccleston, we're writing a Ninth Doctor series. That's tangible in that series. Series 2 comes around, and I think things take a bit of a dip. The quality of the stories just isn't quite as high. It feels like they're struggling for things to do, and I think that persists through the 3rd series. I do think it was running out of steam. I don't think it could have sustained a series 4 or 5 with this format. And we've said it the whole way along. The Ninth Doctor's great. Christopher Eccleston's fantastic. We all missed Rose. We all really missed Rose and Billy Piper. And the feel of these two stories, and even Eccleston's performance and Billy Piper's performance, feels like they're feeding off each other. And that's getting them back into the 2005 characters again. So delighted that we got these stories. They were the right stories for Eccleston, obviously, at the time. Utterly thrilled that he has ultimately felt able to go on and do some with Billy Piper then as well. It's absolute magic. And we're getting this, every other month, a new Ninth Doctor and Rose story. I think it's brilliant. But that's my overall opinion on the Ninth Doctor Adventures. They were the right stories for us at the time. Series 1 still feels the most exciting and innovative. Series 2 and 3, it's almost like they're treading water. They're trying to find new things to do, but nothing's quite working because of the limits that Eccleston has placed on what he wants to do with the character and with the range. I think that we're in a better place now with Rose being back, and they're able to have that doctor and companion relationship fully present, and that's what these stories lacked, and we've got that back. But oh my god, nothing more exciting will ever happen at Big Finish than that announcement of Christopher Eccleston is coming back to play the Doctor again. That is genuinely one of my happiest memories, reading that reveal for the first time, because I know I've talked about this reveal before, and we knew it was coming. We knew that there was going to be something announced at 4:00 on a specific day, and we were all sitting waiting for it. I did not, in 1,000,000 years, expect to see the words "Christopher Eccleston returns to Doctor Who" ever. At that point, I did not think it was going to happen, and did, and it's the greatest thing that will ever happen in Doctor Who for me, I think.
Absolutely. You know what? I kind of hadn't considered this until you said it, but I'm completely with you on Respond to All Calls being the strongest set from these 3 series. Absolutely. And I think
Was that
Old
the
Friends
second?
is
Was that the
close.
second one?
Yes,
Okay.
Girl Deconstructed, and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great set. And I think Old Friends is a close second, but yeah, I'm with you. Your closing thoughts, Mansoor?
Not much more to add. But yeah, I think the run does go back and forth. Like, yeah, maybe stronger in the first series, and then a really strong finish with the River stories. I think you could curate a really tight playlist of maybe like a longish season of 15, 16 stories out of all of these, and they would all be like really like really enjoyable, excellent stories. And I said this before, I think, on previous episodes. It's not that the rest of them are actively bad. It's just that there are some where I kind of struggle to remember, like anything that sort of stuck with me. But yeah, there are plenty of like memorable, strong stories that you could pick out of this list.
I think part of that actually comes from the strong stories are so strong that anything that isn't, exceptional doesn't necessarily stand up. Like, I think the sort of baseline for a memorable story in this range is actually
It's pretty
probably
high.
quite high. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mix. It's a mix of fine stories and excellent stories. So, which is not
Yeah.
not a
I
bad
do
thing.
like that they were able to tick off a lot of the shopping list stuff. Like, we never got the Ninth Doctor and the Cybermen on TV, so obviously you want that from the Big Finish range. You got classic companions. You got Liv Chenka, in a story with the Ninth Doctor, sheer perfection. And you were able to tick off a lot of the monsters that he never met. They're even able to. I know it was in Once and Future, but they're even able to tick off and give him a story with a version of the Master. So, I like that they were able to go around and hit off. Okay, Christopher Eccleston didn't get to do a lot of the big Doctor Who things. We're going to do those now.
And one day we're going to get that Shooty Gatwa Dalek story.
Yeah, I'm thinking
in exactly the same way.
Exactly the same way. Shooty Gatwa not getting to meet the Daleks and the Cybermen, or the Master. He didn't get to be the big three.
No,
we got the
none
Rani,
of them.
but yeah, that's sad. It's sad for him. I know he's talked about it himself. So hopefully someday down the line, not that I ever expect for a million years that Shooty Gatwa will ever come down and do Big Finish.
But we're all here and waiting, ready to click that pay with PayPal button as soon as he does.
100%. We are 100%.
Okay, well, it's been a great deal of fun going through all three of these series, and we've ended up with a bit of a bumper episode here, but I think this series deserves its bumper episode. Yeah, absolutely top stuff, and I'm glad we've kind of made it through. We'll have to sort of consider a future project like this, but in the meantime, we are out of time. So it's not goodbye, it's just au revoir.
Hey, very good.
Hey. So I will say au revoir to Connor.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
I will say au revoir to Mansoor. It's been fantastic. Yeah, we will be back for more spodcasting very, very soon. Goodbye now.